Hello and welcome to the after party. I'm No White Guilt, and with me is the Saturnian Mr. George. And if you have not seen the Saturnian Mr. George's new video on Red Ice about hail, you should do so as soon as we are done here today because it is absolutely magnificent. In fact, toward the end, I had chills. The honors roll call highlights and celebrates those who have conscientiously committed to monthly subscription investments in my work for White Wellbeing. And appearing on the All Stars portion on the honors roll call today is Mobile Scotty. And those remaining on the honors roll call are M. He Cox and Hendrickson. There is a special place in heaven for those who do the right thing, when the devil has the power to tell the world that the right thing is immoral. I thank you all. Folks, if you are not following HB 2014 on Twitter at _HB 2014, you should do so immediately and help to spread the stellar clips that he produces. Let's make HB a Twitter titan, nonpareil. And the Superchat crown winner of last week is NPC162 for investing a total of 162. It's not just coincidence, dollars. Congratulations, my dear friend, and thank you so very much. In second place was Ohesian Outlaw, investing $20. Congratulations, and thank you in addition. You can Superchat on YouTube at 30%. On Entropy at 15%, which I will have up and running in a few moments, where you can also watch the stream and ask and vote on questions, participate in any polls that I post. On Ko-fi at 15%, Cash App at 6%. Jared and I evenly share the Super Chats with our guests here on the After Party. Today, we're getting tapped into Squatting Slav from the YouTube channel of the same name and my soon-to-be guide to all things Lithuanian. Slav makes informative and entertaining topical videos as well as man-on-the-street videos, a roisterer confronting and challenging anti-whites for our amusement. He hails, you hear that, folks? From the distant land of Serbia, lives in Canada, started making videos in 2017, and we hope he will continue to do so forever. Jared, I'm going to throw another log on the fire because it's mighty cold in Canada. Please give our guest a warm Slavic welcome.
Well, here we are, and you're going to have to explain in a few minutes why you want to be taking around Lithuania. Well, Slav, welcome back. He was on March 1st of last year. It's almost been 1 year. I cannot believe it, but we were talking in that conversation a lot about comparisons between North America and Europe, particularly Eastern Europe, of course. That is the neck of the woods that our friend here knows the best. And we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff tonight, just have a freewheeling, fun conversation. We know that some of our British friends are still staying up very late with us as they're celebrating Brexit. Indeed. And we know this is just the beginning, but we need to take our celebrations and enjoy them while we can. So this is a moment to celebrate. We're all British tonight, and I'm celebrating too, sharing some very inspiring things that I've found on Twitter. So we can talk a little bit about that at some point, perhaps. So yeah, we're all honorary British tonight. We're talking to our friend Slav from Serbia, who lives in Canada. It's Western civilization all over the place. And Jason and I were all over Red Ice today. I had my new video, Hail, come out, my fourth feature now for Red Ice. And Jason, of course, guest co-hosted Flashback Friday with Henrik. So a lot of wonderful things going on we'll get into. But Slav, are you there, brother? And if you are, can you begin just by telling us, we want to talk a lot about the trip that you took in the summer to Serbia. Or did you go anywhere else? So we could take our time with this and really get into it. So if you could first say hello and lay out when and where you went, and then we'll get into it from there.
Bottom left. There you go, brother.
Well, thank you guys for having me on the show once. Thanks for having me on the show once again. It's a real pleasure. It feels almost like yesterday that we were speaking, but it's been nearly a year now. So time is definitely just whizzing by us all. And in terms of my trip, I actually was planning to go in the summer, as I do every single year, to visit all my extended family there in Belgrade, Serbia. Belgrade, of course, is the capital of Serbia. But due to being extremely busy over the last few months, I postponed that trip to October. And the interesting thing is that I actually hadn't been there in the fall, essentially since I was a child. So it was definitely a little bit different. In the summer, it's brutally hot there. It gets to be like 35, 40 degrees Celsius. I have no clue what that is in Fahrenheit. So
I think it's well into the
it
90s.
was absolutely it was a big yeah. It's hot in any case, but I ended up going in October to visit my extended family. And it was beautiful. The weather was great. It was still extremely warm even towards the end of October. And essentially, I mean, I was there primarily to visit family and relax, and just sort of enjoy the sights and sounds of the city. And I meant to go. I meant to travel Europe a bit more. I've seen most of Europe. I've been all over Western Europe and Eastern Europe, and I meant to go to Austria again and Spain, but I just got so caught up with everything there that in the end I didn't even really want to budge and go anywhere outside of Serbia. So I actually stayed there for 3 weeks, and it was amazing. It's always an eye opener to go back there to change settings, to sort of escape all the craziness of North America and just embrace the homeland. So it was absolutely wonderful.
Wait, before this gets away from me, because I know HB 2014 is going to be asking, what was that word that you used in your intro, Jason?
Saturnian.
What is it?
Saturnian.
Is that being like Saturn?
It's peaceful and prosperous.
Oh, all right. I'll take that. I like that. All right. So
so everybody knows, if they were watching earlier, I'll just very quickly say, I had my tongue went free today in a frenectomy procedure. That is, my tongue was tied to the bottom of my mouth by flesh. And earlier today, I had that cut away with a laser beam. So I've been having an issue here or there, but otherwise, so if you hear something go a little awry, it's because I have this new tongue.
You're sounding great. Imagine if Jason was tongue-tied before, now it's power that will be unleashed.
Please, Jared, go right ahead.
I thought you were going to say your tongue was hanging out of your mouth for a different reason, but you could tell us about the Lithuanian thing later. So Slav, so you were in the city. Did you travel the countryside at all during those 3 weeks? I think you are muted, my friend.
Yeah, bottom left. And he's also, our audio is reaching him a little bit late, so we need to take that into account when we speak.
It has to travel all the way from eastern the U.S. to West Coast Canada. So the signal goes
all the way over.
It takes a second.
Bottom left, if you can still hear us, brother. Yeah, he just read.
Yeah,
okay.
So were you
I
in the
can hear you guys perfectly. Yep. Pardon me, what was that last question?
The countryside. Did you make it out to the countryside at all in October?
Yeah, I did. I actually have a cabin that's on a mountain just about 2 hours outside of the city. And I actually spent a lot of my childhood at this cabin. It's very remote. It's in a very remote mountainous region. And it's absolutely beautiful. Like, I used to go here as a child just to escape the heat of the city during the summer, because the climate is a lot more mild. So it's sort of a tradition that I have to always, at least for a weekend, to sort of enjoy nature. Even though I live very remote, even right now in Canada, I live in a small town a couple hours away from Vancouver, in almost complete wilderness. Like I have moose and bears and all sorts of crazy animals just outside of my house. I actually almost tamed a last summer. It was I sort of made the mistake of feeding it fruits, and then I named it Oprah Winfrey. It just kept this fat black bear just kept coming back, and it's now sort of my pet. I'm trying to teach it tricks. Of course, it's hibernating now, but it will be back in a few months.
Leave it to squatting Slav to tame a bear.
Exactly.
Less of you.
Precisely.
So why I was asking about the countryside is when you were there in October, in the autumn, the beginning of autumn, did you see or did you participate in any kinds of old customs that are tied to that time of year that are celebrated there?
You know what? Not really, because we often have this conception, especially a lot of people in North America. We have this conception, especially amongst people on the right, that that Eastern Europe is this sort of bastion of tradition and of Christianity, and that if you go there, you'll see girls with headscarves, picking flowers in the wheat fields. It's not like that. A lot of these a lot of traditions and rituals and things are almost extinct unless you're in these really, really small towns. But otherwise, like in the big city, it's no different than anywhere else. And in these smaller places, it's globalized. Don't get me wrong; it's still unique and it still has its charm, but it's definitely a lot different than it was back in the day. And it's very hard to sort of to find these things and to essentially participate in all of these older sort of rituals and things. I actually find that sort of the Serbian enclaves in North America gravitate more towards these than do the people back home. The people back home are generally very progressive, especially the ones that live in the major cities. Less so in the small towns, of course. But I definitely feel that the Serbian diaspora sort of tries to preserve these traditions a lot more than people back home. You have people here families essentially, and Serbian communities who will go to church routinely every single Sunday. They'll have their children enlisted in which is the traditional Serbian dance, and they'll absolutely maintain these traditions. Whereas back home, that's kind of fading out, because I guess over there everyone looks up to the Western way of life, and they chase the Western way of life. But little do they know that a lot has changed here. When I say Western, I mean the North American way of life. But little do they know how much things have changed here, and how how much even the living standard has changed. So a lot of people from Serbia end up moving to Canada or to the U.S. They think that money grows on trees, that they believe in the American dream, this whole conception, and then they come here and they're shocked, when they can barely afford to buy a home or work a job to support their families. So things have really, really changed. And I honestly tell people there, like, it's not even really worth for you to try to come to North America anymore. Things have drastically changed here, even since my family moved here, and that was back in 1995. Back then you could go to the grocery store here and for $30-$40 buy all the things you need for half the week or the whole week. Now it's like you need $200 just to buy the bare necessities.
Yeah, for anyone who wants to hear a little about the nuances of what's really going on in Eastern Europe, we got into that initially when Slav was first on. Again, that was March 1st of last year, of 2019, because he was pointing out there are certainly differences, but like anything, it's not quite as simple as the memes that you see about Eastern Europe. But even so, you were telling us a little before the show that you kind of had a pang in your heart when you had to go back to Canada. There are still differences. So again, we have as much time as we need to talk about your impressions and what you saw, similarities and differences. I'm also interested to hear about this notion that you were just saying about how Serbian people are looking to North America and wanting to be like us, and what they're losing along the way, and how you think perhaps they could kind of catch themselves before they go too far and get back to some of the ways of life that make their people strong. But yeah, anywhere you want to begin with just the impressions of what this trip left you with and the differences that you saw when you came back.
Absolutely. I think the one thing that really got to me was just the fact that I was in a almost completely homogenous setting there. And this is something that really struck me, and this isn't something that you notice until you step out. The diversity of North America. There's a lot of tourists in Belgrade, Serbia. Nowadays, 20 years ago, you would only see them in certain spots, and you would barely hear English on the streets. Now you could go to, to the most remote outskirts of the city, and you'll find tourists speaking English. You'll find a lot of, Brits and a lot of Americans working in Serbia, working IT jobs, working for various American and British companies. And you have, tourists year round coming to Serbia, checking out the country, because it's essentially now being shown in a positive light, whereas in the 90s, as we all know, during the era of the Clintons, it was completely demonized. We were essentially barbarians and warmongers and everything else. But now that now that misconception falling apart, and people are realizing, wow, Serbia and Eastern Europe in general, there's a lot of gems to discover there, and it's still relatively cheap compared to North America. So it's definitely it's definitely seeing a lot of tourists pass through, and a lot of foreigners year round. But nonetheless, the homogeneity was something that really struck me there. We have the Roma, the Gypsies there, but they're a small minority, and they don't cause any problems really. Other than that, it's like 98% white over there, and that once you're there, that really you kind of start to appreciate that, because all of a sudden, you can make all these jokes without worrying about who you're going to offend, and you always sort of feel a certain comfort around you, because you know that everyone around you shares similar views and similar perceptions. So that was great. And coming back to Canada was very difficult. Like, as soon as I got off the plane, there's Mohammed asking me for my passport, this and that, wanting to search my bags, just harassing me and all the typical stuff, searching my computer. So you go to this there, and then all of a sudden you come back, and it's an absolute cultural shock. It takes a few days to to these things, but I guess this is sort of a feeling that you can only sort of embrace once you leave North America, and you sort of see it for yourself.
There's that phenomenon where sometimes you don't know stress that you have until it's gone, or something unhealthy in your body until it's gone. What did that feel like? It's insane for me to have to ask you this if you think about the state of affairs we're in.
Yeah.
But what did that feel like to be surrounded by your people? What are the subtle things you don't even realize when you're in North America that are just lifted off of your shoulders? What is that like?
It feels absolutely amazing, and in general, people there are a lot more relaxed, and everything is everything is kind of improvised. I mean, we're a very social people. If if you go anywhere in Eastern Europe, cafes, restaurants, bars, and clubs are buzzing 24/7. Now, that might not necessarily be a great thing, but people are always out. They're always interacting. They're always socializing. After work, people meet up for drinks, and they have a social outlet. They talk about their day, and they sort of release all the tension and stress that that comes from work. Whereas in North America, people go to work and then they'll go home and then go to sleep and right away back to work, and then they'll do something on the weekend. So in Europe, it's a lot more social, in Eastern Europe at least, it's a lot more social. And this is something that really stands out. Like, you can literally go out on a Monday afternoon, a Monday night, any day of the work week, and you'll see people socializing. And this is just amazing to see, because I feel that it's a lot more isolated in Canada, and the US as well, in North America. It's a lot more difficult to approach people here. People are a lot more closed off, and people are very social. Like, you can go there and make friends in a day or two. Whereas I feel that for newcomers to North America, it's kind of harder to make friends. I feel like people have a lot more walls around them and a lot more barriers. So yeah, that even some basic interactions like that are something that really sticks out, and something that I really miss when I'm here. Don't get me wrong, I have tons of friends here, great ones as well. But at the same time, over there, it's just on a different level, and the mindset is a lot more social than here.
Slav, I would imagine that you can just approach someone and strike up a conversation because of the homogeneity that you spoke to, that everyone's on the same page, because the assumptions are there, the social signals, the ways of communicating. You don't have to guess what the other person's going to be like or react like. It's a more tight window of possibilities, a little more predictable, and therefore it's safer, it's more manageable, it's friendlier.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, here, when you approach someone, if it's a female or someone else, you can't really. You have to be kind of careful and have a filter with what you say, whereas, because you never know how that person's going to react. Whereas over there, it's a lot more relaxed. You can tell someone a joke, even if it's a little bit more offensive, and they'll laugh, because they'll know you're just joking. Everyone is on the same level. Everyone has the same sort of standards when it comes to humor and these basic interactions. So it's definitely more relaxed. And in terms of things like safety, people think, oh, these war-torn countries are dangerous, this and that. I've been there every single summer now for the past 20 years, and I don't think I've ever seen a single bar fight or fight at the club or anything like that when I used to go out. Whereas in here in Vancouver, when I used to go, forgive me, clubbing, it was like every single Friday night, either I'd be fighting or someone else would be fighting over the stupidest things. So it's you've really strong people there and really high test guys, and everyone's always competing for girls, but you never feel unsafe over there.
What about the safety for women in particular?
I think it's a lot more safe than here for women, because as I mentioned previously, there's just a culture of socializing and always hanging out. Like, if you're in the city there and you're passing through random city blocks, you'll see people just in front of their buildings hanging out, talking with their friends till 1 or 2 or 3 a.m. No one's going to make a noise complaint or whine about these people loitering or anything else. There's no private property signs everywhere like there is here in so climate. And I think that social promotes safety. There are migrants in Serbia now, and people will tell you that they're harassing women, this and that. And I honestly haven't even heard of that happening, because they just, it's everyone's always outside. It's like there's no safety concerns there at all.
Do people go out in larger groups with brothers, sisters, cousins, is like more family that you kind of travel in packs when you go out socializing?
Usually people go out with groups of friends from school, or people that they know from their neighborhoods. I find that's something also that people there value a lot more than here. It's the friendships that they make from an early age. If for instance, if people are if they have classmates there in elementary school, they'll remain friends with these people all throughout high school, college, and university. Whereas here, those friendships sort of fade in and out. But yeah, like all the people from my childhood that I know there are still great friends of mine, and the people that they were friends with back in the day are still their friends. So it's always these large groups of close friends that are going out everywhere.
And what about traveling to Western Europe? Do you have friends, especially women, that have gone to Western European countries or to North America and reacted to the less safe environment, or anyone had any incidents?
Well, definitely, I don't think anyone has had any incidents that I know of personally, but situation, I've spoken to multiple girls in Serbia who have lived in places like Germany and Sweden, and they say that they feel unsafe. Actually, know a few girls who live in Serbian girls actually who live in Sweden, and they say, like, we can't walk alone at night. There's parts of there's probably need to be accompanied by male to even be able to go alone at night. So this kind of thing, absolutely. I mean, this is unheard of in Serbia. But yeah, absolutely. Like, I've heard multiple people complaining about certain certain safety issues in Western Europe, and they are aware that they're unable to go alone at night and wander around at night as freely as they are in Serbia.
And does that prompt any conversations about politics? Do you all kind of talk to each other and say, man, we have to make sure our government doesn't go down this whole EU thing of let all these people in? And how is the government there with that kind of thing? Do they make overtures in that direction? Or is it more like what we see over here about Hungary, where they're taking or Poland, where they're taking more of a hard line and unapologetically saying, look, we're going to remain our people. If we have something with birth rates, we're going to do something internal to fix it, the way Hungary's incentivizing families, etc.
Yeah, so I mean, I always kind of probe women when I'm speaking to them, just to see where they lean politically. I'll drop a joke about migrants, or something like that, or I'll just make a joke about Trump or something, that the regular normie finds offensive, just to sort of just to feel them out. But over there, it's like you can talk about all this stuff. You can hold political views that are conservative or far right, and no one's gonna get look at you wide-eyed and ask you if you're a Nazi, or how you can support Trump or some right-wing politician. People there are generally a lot more open to discussion about these things. People there are very educated. Everyone goes to university, and the schooling system is a lot different. So there's a lot of really smart people there that you can have an easygoing conversation with. But at the same time, it's very split in terms of the EU. A lot of people, once again, see the EU as the light at the end of the tunnel, as the ultimate problem solver for all their issues, and a lot of other people know exactly what's going on. They see what's happened with Spain, they see what's happened with Portugal and Greece, and everything else that's going on right now. So they're fully aware that the EU is a sinking ship and a ticking time bomb that they absolutely don't want to be part of.
What is the, if I could just jump in, Jared, what's the media say there, the regime say in Serbia? Are they encouraging anti-white trains of thought? Are there anti-white advertisements that encourage biological white erasure? In other words, white people with non-white mates. Do you see in Serbia, like we see here in Canada and the US, where if they're going to show something to deal with a bed, a sheet, a comforter, a pillow, a bed frame, a mattress, it's got to almost, it feels like it's got to be 70% of the time it's a white woman with a non-white male. Invariably will be in the ad somewhere, but a white person with a non-white person 90% of the time nonetheless. Do you see that there? Is it as blatant, or is it more subtle, the anti-white propaganda?
It's a little bit more subtle. Like walking around the city, I noticed that most billboards, for instance, are just use the same like advertising tactics. The same poses, this and that. The people will strike the same pose as they will, an ad in North America on a billboard. And they'll have similar looks to these people, but no, it's definitely a lot more subtle. Now, of course, the other Western and North America that's penetrating there, that has been the pop culture media, of course, as it's been dominating all around the world. It's no exception there. People will see these rap videos or see these movies and advertisements, especially the younger generation, which is a lot more impressionable and a lot more sort of progressive in their mindset. They'll kind of look up to them and worship them, but at the same time, a woman, if she a black boyfriend to 90% will say of course. So it's not as bad as it is here. The sort of globalization is obviously, but it as it is here.
Right. Yeah, I thank God that they have not lost their minds as some have here. And of course, it always seems worse than it actually is. We look at the actual data, we don't see as much biological white erasure as, of course, they push. And that was one of the things that it's important when we have our discussions with friends, family, and strangers about these things, that this is clearly something that they push and is present in their advertising, their meme pathogens, their propaganda at a far greater percentage than in the real world. So I imagine that, even in Serbia, it's probably next to non-existent in the actual manifestation and actual fact, and yet it could probably still be found. Certainly, if things like movies, etc., are coming from the United States and being played in Serbia, I guess, are they being played? This is the question that is maybe just a little bit off the normal path, and that is, when the movies are played or TV shows are played, are they in English because everybody just speaks English just fine, or do they also have subtitles? And if so, do they play down or play up any of the anti-white language in the subtitles that you were able to see?
The movies are all in English with subtitles usually. And everyone there speaks English nowadays, whereas 20 years ago or so, very few people did. But now almost everyone speaks English, just because of the influx of tourists and foreigners that are there year round. But otherwise, no. They don't really accentuate any of these things in movies and in the media. Like I said, it's. There's of course there's tons of American pop culture. The presence of American pop culture there is of course very strong, and a lot of people look up to these things. but at the same time, it's not as pervasive as it is here. One thing that I do notice there that's kind of bothersome to me is this new trend of reality TV shows, which are absolutely degenerate. I don't even watch any of the ones here, so I wouldn't even know the names of them. But it's these classic reality TV shows where you have a bunch of girls and guys living in the same house, doing all this stupid stuff and all this. That's a very common trend now over there, and that's something that just sort of that kind of exploded in the course of the last maybe 5 years or so. So that's one thing that bothers me, and it bothers me that so many young kids are into these shows, and that they glorify the celebrities that are in these shows, and these celebrities are like the biggest simpletons in the world. They were nothing and nobody yesterday, and all of a sudden they bang some chick on a TV show, and now they're famous. So a lot of young people do look up to this stuff, and it is something that I would personally ban there, because it's just so destructive and so degenerate. It has no place on TV.
Well, let me just,
at least in my opinion.
This is fantastic, this information that you are providing right now, brother, because this is the kind of thing that we can all learn a great deal from. And Slav is a great friend of Jared and mine, and he's really doing a great job for us here tonight, especially because we are taking essentially a step back in time. We are stepping into a time capsule for most of our countries, and we are taking this step back in time by way of Slav, who has stayed in back home, Serbia, and he is seeing what it's like for our grandparents. Essentially, he is seeing there what we experience in most of our countries, those of us who are watching now live and in replay. We were seeing the propaganda where they are highlighting and glamorizing and glorifying a particular behavior that is not a behavior of our people. And what does this end up doing? This ends up causing our young women to desire these particular traits, these particular behaviors. And the more women that desire it, the more men who are going to try to imitate it, because they want the attention of the women. And inevitably, invariably, who's going to be the person who is going to be able to be the best rapper, the best inner city thug black rapper, if not an inner city thug black rapper? It's not going to be the imitator white guy from Serbia who is, donned the chains or donned the slang or the walk or whatever it might be. And so to get the real deal, eventually they're going to be wanting the non-white versions. And that is how this gets introduced. So you can all go to your friends, family, and strangers and share with them the exact state that Serbia is in right now, and how the anti-white, the mean pathogens are landing on those people. It's always going to be applied in the way that is most effective for the particular population of white people. So in other words, they're not going to go to Serbia and say, well, now we have access, and so let's just start them off with where they are in the UK today. Let's start them off with where they are in the US today, because that is going to be too discordant with where they are. So instead, they're going to begin with these reality shows where everybody is white on the show, and everybody is going to have similar background from Serbia or whatever. And then they're going to inject a little bit, fire one of the white people. So it'll be a diversity fire. Then they'll inject the non-white guy. And then he's going to be the guy that all of the girls, if they're going to want to be paid and be on that television show, he's going to be the guy that all of the girls are going to want. And then what's going to happen to all the girls out in the streets that are watching this, and they're learning that, well, this is the way to behave. And then they'll start teaching, as they taught us, as we talk about in Go Free, they'll start teaching all of our brothers and sisters in Serbia exactly how it is eminently moral and good and noble to want one of these non-white people, and to biologically white erase our people out of existence and date him and have his children. And it is eminently immoral and wrong and unethical to choose the Serbian guy who says, no, you shouldn't go with this guy because it's harmful to our heritage, it's harmful to our history, it's harmful to our people. That is what you're seeing in motion, real time, by being able to zoom right in with Slav on what's taking place on the ground in Serbia. And if we had a country that was even further along that we didn't have contact with, we could zoom into the future to see where they would be with manipulating our people with these mean pathogens into the next phase of white erasure. So it is a great blessing to be able to have you on with us again, brother. Jared and I have been waiting a long time to have you back on the show. So it really is a great thing. Now, did you have any opportunities to tell any folks there, young or otherwise, that, hey, don't imitate this garbage from the United States or from the UK or from Canada, wherever it's coming from? Don't imitate this garbage because it leads to X, Y, and Z, and it's all pitiful. It's all wrong. These people end up in horrible positions, raped or what have you. And if so, if you were able to have any of those conversations, what kind of response did you get? Were these people in disbelief? Like, how could that even happen? Are you a man from the future? I mean, or did you hear people that said, well, that seems reasonable. Maybe you have something legitimate to say. What were those conversations like if you had them?
Yeah, I've had conversations along those lines, but basically, I always try to hint to people there, like I was mentioning earlier on in the show. I tried to sort of hint to them, North America isn't the to see that they imagine it to see. So a lot of people, a major problem in Serbia and most of Eastern Europe today is this brain drain. Have something like 30,000 leaving Serbia on an annual basis. Going to countries to work and to pursue further education, just because the economy there is so bad and so unstable. So I usually start to hint and tell them, like, hey, inflation in North America is so that even with a job that makes X, Y, and Z annually, you can't afford X, Y, and Z. And then usually the conversation will be like, oh, well, how? Well, like, how come? Like, I heard this and that. And then I'll sort of tell them, like, listen, things aren't as they were 20 years ago. Things are constantly changing there. And then from sort of that from sort of this, like, this economic and financial talk, I'll sort of steer the conversation into politics, and I'll tell them relations in Serbia, and during Christmas, during Easter, all these different festivities and festivals. Do you really want to come to Canada, where the biggest party of the year and the biggest festival is the Pride Parade? Do you want is that something you want? Do you want to come to to a country where it's frowned upon to say Merry Christmas to your friends, to your family, and to your neighbors? Do you want to come to a country where you're going to be the minority, whether it's now or in the next 10 years? And once you sort of start to paint the picture for them, they can they start to associate these images, with things that they're hearing about, Germany and Sweden, and they kind of begin to understand that it's not all. It's the grass really isn't greener on the other side of the fence as they always imagine it to be. Now, don't get me wrong. A lot of people that left in the 90s and came here, my family included, everyone has great jobs, everyone's doing wonderfully, but it's a struggle for people that are coming over now. It's a lot more difficult, like I was mentioning earlier, even to afford housing. So why come to North America and break your back trying to live here when you can maybe live a little bit of a poorer life in Serbia, but nonetheless just as happy without all the stress that comes with living in this setting.
Where you live in Canada, you said you're outside of the city. So what is your day-to-day life like there? Do you feel far removed from the kind of global homo stuff you mentioned, and it's more you're seeing it in the general zeitgeist in the media or when you travel into cities, but does it touch you where you are? Like, is your more rural life similar to something that's simple in Serbia, or does the craziness in Canada still affect you even though you're well outside of the city?
Yeah, it's a great question. I actually think about that all the time. I moved out of Vancouver, so I moved out of the city 2.5 years ago. I'm an electrician, and I have an electrical company here in this tiny little town, just a few hours outside of Vancouver. Vancouver's on the west coast, and this is in the interior of the province. And this is a German town, whereas most other it was founded by German settlers. The other towns are smaller towns in British Columbia here are First Nations or Aboriginal. So you can definitely feel that there's a stronger European and white in this very small town. People are extremely friendly. You go to the local Safeway, and the cashier greets you like it's a town that has maybe 3,000 people. So everyone knows each other, and there's this nice sense of community. I'm not going to be here too much longer. Maybe for the next few months. I'm just setting up a few things over here, and I'll be back in Vancouver. But there's definitely a stark contrast between city life in Vancouver, where everything is alienated and isolated, and these smaller communities where it's really tight and internet, where everyone knows everyone else, and everyone is extremely friendly. And yeah, it absolutely reminds me of smaller towns in Serbia. It can be sort of a bad thing that everyone has their nose in other people's business, but it can be a wonderful thing too. You know your neighbors, the people that your children go to school with. You can go to the you can go to the grocery store or the barber salon, and the person will know you right away. So it's great, like having this sense of community, and it absolutely reminds me of smaller places in Serbia where this is still very much a thing.
Hey, I had a similar line of questioning that Jason started with a few moments ago about the comparisons and people being aware. It seems like what you're describing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that in Serbia they're a little less suspect of Westerners and America than maybe in some other places, because I've heard just bits from other places around Europe that aren't as bitten by globo homo, and they look askance at Americans or British people kind of coming over, and they're like, well, you can't escape here. You can't just run here. You have to deal with what's going on in your own home, or just don't like the importation of American media, all the Hollywood and the music, like you were saying too. So what are the Serbians' views on people from Western Europe and people from North America in that sense? Is it kind of all still glorified just because there was this idea that there was more prosperity, or do they have that thing where they look at you askance? It sounded like you were saying that they were a little more accepting maybe than other places.
Well, people in general in Serbia are generally extremely friendly and extremely hospitable, and very, very social, like I've emphasized earlier. So when you have Brits or people from the U.S. visiting there, and reaching out to make Serbian friends, Serbian people will welcome them, with open arms most of the time. Now there are of course still a lot of people there who view Americans and Brits as a sort of NATO scum, and they hold this grudge because of the NATO bombings that occurred in Serbia in 1999, and so they view Americans and Brits as the perpetrators of this war violence and these bombings. But amongst the younger generation, these sentiments are fading, and the average Serbian person is able to discriminate and differentiate good American people and bad American people. They'll hate someone like Hillary Clinton, of course, but they'll fully embrace the average person who's social and who's willing to reach out and make friends with them. Like I've been out. I went out almost every night there, at least to have a drink or something, and I'd always see these groups of Brits or Americans with Serbs, having drinks, socializing. So yeah, it's just, I mean, the view of Americans and British people there and Westerners in general is generally very positive. And just because of the fact that there's so many tourists from the U.S. and from these other countries visiting on a daily basis, people are a lot more exposed to Americans than they were per se, 15, 20 years ago. So the attitudes have definitely changed. People there have witnessed firsthand aren't these warmongering, war hawks, and vice versa. Americans have realized that, hey, Serbs aren't baby killers and kebab removers. So yeah, it goes both ways.
I should mention a bit of housekeeping too. Well, I don't know if this really qualifies as housekeeping, but clarification. Serbia is not in the EU. I was talking about the EU earlier, but it is a candidate country. Is that right? So that's still kind of in limbo?
Yeah, exactly. It's been in limbo for quite a long time now. And I think they're sort of the regime there is sort of playing fence sitter. If they really wanted to go into the EU, they could have done it 10 years ago. But I think they're sort of sitting in the middle, occupying this middle ground where they can sort of exploit the EU and and still have their way with Russia and have a good relationship with Putin instead of going in one specific direction. So it's definitely kind of split. A lot of these progressives, like everywhere else in Europe, just want to get into the EU. They think it's going to solve all their problems, that the economy is going to improve overnight, that everyone's going to be rich. But anyone with a few brain cells inside their head can see that this isn't the case, and that that the EU is literally a sinking ship at this point.
Right. Especially as we broadcast tonight on Independence Day for Britain.
Yeah.
Very exciting for all of our British brothers and sisters. What about this line? There's a lot of criticism of cities and urban life in our circles, and I totally understand it. But just like anything, a lot of nuance gets lost on Twitter and social media and memes. You were talking about Belgrade before, right? Being in Belgrade. And it sounds like it's not necessarily urban life per se, that it's all bad, like anything. It's a little more nuanced than that, and we like to delve into the nuance here. It sounds like the people and their values and how you fit into the social fabric really is the deciding factor. There's always going to be little pockets where populations gather for whatever reason, for trade and centers of art and culture. So it sounds like what you're saying, but I'd love your more thoughts on this, is that we all know that there's a lot of benefits of traditional rural life, and that gets rehearsed a lot in these circles. But I think it's sometimes important to remind people too that urban life, it might not be all 100% bad, and it really is more about the kind of city it is and the kind of people that are there. So I know we already talked about it. If you don't have too much to say, we can go on to something else. But I just wanted to hit that point specifically and see if you had any more to elaborate on that.
I agree 100% with you that it depends, that it depends on the city, and of course the people are the ones that make the city. I've been to countless cities in North America that I've absolutely loved, and countless cities such as Portland that I've absolutely hated. And once again, it's just the people in those cities that make the city. Now, take it from someone who lives a rural life, someone who chops wood to make fires and who hunts. I absolutely enjoy this way of life, but I also love being in the city. I love socializing. I enjoy going out. I love seeing, the architecture of the city, just the social fabric, the buzzing streets. So personally, I think a balance of both is great. person when you master living, both in the city and in a rural environment where you sort of have to apply your skills of you just don't have everything laid out in front of you here. You have to gather wood. You can hunt, you can do this, you can do that. You face other problems, like it was minus 40 degrees here a few days ago. All my water lines froze, so I have to deal with some things here that I'd never be exposed to in the city. But nonetheless, although it is frustrating sometimes, it's absolutely amazing because you just you develop this skill base and this knowledge base that you're absolutely completely separated from in the city, where everything is served to you basically on a silver platter. Now, with that being said, once again, it really depends on which city you're living in. I know people who want to get the hell out of Vancouver and move somewhere rural, and then I know people in rural areas who want to get out of these towns because they lived here all their life. So for people, the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence. Everyone thinks that the things that they don't have are essentially better than what they have at present. But ultimately, yeah, it really depends on which city you live in. Like Belgrade, for instance, is wonderful because you have all this old architecture and all this history, all these museums and theaters. But then at the same time, amongst all that, you have all these modern cafes, bars. If you're into going to clubs, the city's just buzzing 24/7. You have all these parks, and that's something nice too. People over there actually hang out in parks and socialize. Like you can go outside at 1 a.m. and people will be in the park with their friends, just joking around or having a drink or something. So that's something that we don't see in a lot of these North American cities that are very isolated, where you have private property signs up everywhere, no loitering signs. So the people create the vibe of the city, and the people ultimately dictate whether that city promotes a very social climate or a climate of alienation and isolation. And that's definitely one thing that was very hard for me to grasp. Like back when I was a kid, I left Serbia when I was 5 years old. I'm 30 years old now, but even when I was 5 years old over there, like I used to play with my friends. We'd play hide and seek in front of the building with a million other kids up until midnight or 1 a.m. and it was perfectly safe. Everyone was always outside. Then I moved to North America, and it's just like you have these concrete slabs or these houses, and no one is outside socializing. Everyone has a fence around their house, and it's a lot more isolated. The sense of community is just isn't as pervasive as it is in Europe. So that's definitely one thing that you'll notice when you go anywhere outside of North America, and particularly in Eastern Europe, is the social scene and just this climate of this social climate, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, this is a bit of a softball question. It's not even really a question. It's more just if there's anything else we could turn over here, because you said a little while ago that when you were speaking about fellow Serbians, they had this idea of coming to North America and that there would be more material prosperity. So that was tempting to some people. They thought maybe they should go over to North America and they'd be able to amass more wealth for their family. Everybody, of course, needs a certain basic level of sustenance to be able to have the basics met. But putting a broader definition on prosperity, it sounds like, as I said, I can't even ask the question because the answer is obvious. But it sounds like the real prosperity is in the tapestry of the social life and the connections, like actually having real person-to-person, deep, multifaceted connection with others. I would say that's one of the main riches of life. Besides your health, obviously you need your health, or you're not going to be enjoying anything. So health is included in that prosperity as well. Even that is kind of woven into this too, because I know some of these countries, like where you're talking about, oftentimes the food supply is a little cleaner. There's not as much preservatives and crazy stuff in the foods. So we could even touch on that. But I'm just curious what your thoughts are, or what you would say to a fellow Serbian who was tempted to come over to North America, and they're only looking at that more material. But at the end of your life, what are you really going to be? What are you assessing, and what are you remembering? Like, even I know you're talking about America, North America, the economic situation not being as great as it was 20 years ago, 25 years ago when your family came over here. But even if someone did have a little more opportunity, they made more money, maybe they took some more vacations, they had a bigger house, they had a nicer car. How does that compare to just that human warmth and that joy and that connection that you keep painting this picture of? I just keep picturing that. I know what you're talking about. I've experienced it too, that social atmosphere and that feeling like everyone belongs and you're enmeshed in this tapestry of that social life of friends and family. That to me seems like where the real riches are. And so many people in the modern world have lost sight of that. We've been all kinds of things try to funnel us into other value systems. But that's really where the juice of life seems to be.
Absolutely. And I mean, it kind of goes back to this whole thing where, people who have less sometimes have more. I'm a firm believer of that. You don't have to have all these crazy material things to be happy. Of course, money helps with a lot of things. But at the end of the day, you can have a great life with with just your bare necessities and just some good people around you. And I think that's essentially why people over there are so social. Because I mean, if you think about all these Eastern European countries, like historically they were very poor, they were politically very turbulent, they all went through numerous wars and conflicts. And people didn't always have all these luxuries that people here are sort of used to having. So they had to make do with what they had, and they had to they sort of had to appreciate friendships more, and friends more, and neighbors more. And I think that's essentially what created this tight knit this sort of this climate, like this social climate that I keep referring to. Simply because people didn't have much, so they had to lean on others and rely on others and be trusting of others. Whereas here it's a lot more collectivist there. Even because of just socialism, and people live in this post-socialist era now. So that collectivism and that collectivist mindset is still deeply engraved within them. Whereas in North America, it's a lot more individualistic. And it's sort of the attitude here is, oh, every man for themselves, whereas over there it's a little bit different. I remember when I was a kid, the neighbor coming at 10 p.m. knocking, asking if she could borrow a cup of flour, and it was like the most casual thing, or she needs this or that, and my parents would give it to her, and it's completely normal. These little interactions are completely normal, and people are used to them. But I don't see as much of that here. It's basically non-existent. If someone knocks on my door here at 10 p.m., I'll probably pull my shotgun out, because it's like okay, we're just not used to these kinds of things here. It's a very different social climate. It's a lot more isolated. So when I'm talking to people there, I tell them about these things. I tell them, hey, look, you just finished work. It's 5 p.m. and you're already having a beer at the cafe. Over there, you're going to work until 5. Your manager might make you stay until 7. Go home stressed out and tired from work, and you're going to go back to work tomorrow and repeat the process. And then you might get to see your friends on the week. I break it down for them on an almost daily basis. I sort of compare their daily activities to the activities of someone who lives here, and I break it down for them. I say, hey, look, you just went to the grocery store, you bought all these things for like $10 or less. If you come to Vancouver, you're going to pay $150 or $200 for all these things that you just bought. So you break it down to them, and you relate all these things to them, and then they really start to see, like, wow, it's not what I've seen on TV, it's not what it used to be, it's not what I've been told. But a lot of people still have this mentality there where they believe that money in North America grows on trees, and that that people when people from here visit there, that life is just a joke to them, that they wipe their behinds with dollar bills, but it's just not like that. But you have to break it down to them, because that's all they've been taught. That's all they see on TV. But once you sort of get into the nitty and gritty and break it down on a daily basis, and you sort of break life down for them, then they start to understand it. And then often, they kind of have this like this change of heart, or they really start to question things, and then they realize that their lives, they aren't that bad. I mean, the average salary there is something like 400, maybe 500 euros max. That's like $700 a month, which is a joke, for the standards here. But if you're making just a little bit above average, if you're making 800 or 1,000 euros in Serbia, you can live like a king there, and people there don't understand that, until they come here, and it's like, oh well, the $500 that I made in the first half of this week or this week is gone on my cell phone bill and my grocery bill. So
yeah, that's a really fabulous. Well, let's jump into
GDP.
What's that, Jared?
It's not just GDP. All those clowns that just talk about life in this numbers and ledgers
right
perspective.
Right.
It's the richness of your life day to day, every day that you live.
Right.
If you don't have those things to kind of wash away the stresses, like going to meet friends after work and that feeling of the camaraderie, I mean, that kills people. That kills you.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I want to add this. We see this. We see this prevalence of this drug culture that's developing in North America. People use a lot of drugs. Even in Vancouver, where I live, cocaine is huge, heroin is huge. People drink a lot, and that's what happens when you don't have these social outlets. You have these, and everything is extremely regulated, and you don't have these social outlets. People look to alternative ways to sort of quell and quench their stress and their sadness and all these things, and it isn't good. In like in Vancouver, most bars or cafes will close at 9 p.m. In Serbia, they're open till 3 a.m. You want you're feeling down, you want to go grab a drink with a friend, you go out at 1 a.m. and that's it. Chances are you'll come home feeling a little bit better. It's like you work, you go home, you sleep, and then you work again. And of this outlet, and the fact that people can't blow off steam leads them to do other destructive and things, such as abusing drugs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Jason, I know you had something to say. I just briefly want to quickly get in. I'm not saying that all of us are the same, and obviously Eastern Europe and Serbia in particular has its nuances, its beauty. But it's not like we always lack those things because of certain cultural or legal or whatever structures in whatever you want to call Western Europe, the Atlantic kind of states, the Anglo sphere, because I know, friends, parents who tell me, in their lifetimes, and this is in cities in America, they did have the kind of camaraderie, some of what Slav is talking about, and knowing their neighbors and knocking on the door for flour. It was here, even in cities in America, or I was in Amsterdam some years ago, and obviously the Netherlands is Western, and that's where the whole stock market started. And there were people out on their bicycles everywhere in Amsterdam, but very friendly. People were like inviting me into their homes. They were very open, and that's a Northwestern European culture. So it does and can exist in all of our cultures in different ways, even amidst the various government and legal structures and traditions that we have. It's just that we're unfortunately a little further along with this battering that we've gotten from the current zeitgeist and milieu, and that's what we're all pushing back against. But Jason, what do you have for us?
Well, we have some questions and we have some super chats, and we want to make sure we get to those before the night is over. And a big congratulations to everyone in the UK. Your Brexit is done, I guess. You got another year before you can pull away to whatever degree. There's still going to be these entanglements. And of course, we talked about a couple of these important things on Red Ice. a little earlier on the Flashback Friday. So you might want to check that out if you want to get my opinions on Brexit, the good, the bad, the things to worry about, and the way we should look at it and continue to move forward. But a big congratulations to all of you, especially if you are up still this late in the night celebrating. And we, as we say to the, I guess, what we do here in the United States, you all might as well make this a firework day. Go ahead and set them off loud and proud, and maybe aim them toward the continent. I don't know. Or the anti-white elite homes, aim them those directions so that they have a wonderful view of the fireworks, not that they'll be harmed by them. We have DB Cooper over here on Cash App, super chatting $10. Thank you, my dear friend. And writing, will we end up like the Palestinians in Israel? Well, just hold on to that question, gentlemen. We have another one from DB Cooper, $3. Thank you, dear friend, over here on Cash App. That's right. It writes here a little more for Squatting Slav. Well, thank you very much, DB Cooper, a wonderful participant in our community. And we'll very quickly, the three of us will say, if we're going to answer anything to this question, will we end up like the Palestinians in Israel? And we'll give that to our guest first, and then we'll continue with these questions and super chats.
It's kind of a hard question to tackle because I mean, it can be interpreted in so many ways. But if this individual is wondering if we'll end up being persecuted and hated within our own communities here in North America, I think it's very possible if we witness this drastic demographic shift, which of course will create a change in the culture as well. So in some way, if we do become the minority one day, we'll definitely be persecuted. And I mean, sadly, it's already happening. I see it. I see the assault on white people definitely already happening in North America. So it's in our best interest to preserve our values and just to make sure that a demographic shift doesn't occur and that the cultural shift doesn't occur, because and it's no longer this Western culture that our countries were founded on. Well, then we're in a lot of trouble.
Very well said. Yeah, I second that. Really, we are already in a state analogous to that, as we are not in control of our own destiny. So I don't know, Jared, do you have anything you wanted to add?
Not too much to what you two just said. We always have to remain vigilant that these things could very well happen and things could get a lot worse. We don't want to take a Pollyanna view and have that kind of mute our fighting spirit. It is a different situation in that there are many people of European descent who are realizing what's going on, and we're spread out geographically, far-flung places, many different continents around the world. And now we're seeing what connects us. We're able to have conversations like this with people all around the world. And so that aspect of it is different, whereas the Palestinians, of course, are one people in a very concentrated, small geographical area. So that brings out all kinds of other considerations, we'll have to see. There's not much more to add. Anything else really becomes speculation. But I understand and appreciate the spirit of the question.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We have over on Ko-fi, Caper Mel, super chatting $12. Thank you, my dear friend. And writing, great to see a fellow Canadian on the show. Welcome to Squatting Slav. Well, a big welcome indeed to our good friend Slav, and he is always welcome back. If he would have not been on the other side of the planet, he would have been already back before now. We also have JK160 here on YouTube, super chatting $5, writing, my neighbors and I don't even speak the same language. Communities have been destroyed in the U.S. Well, precisely. And that is all a function of anti-whiteism, absolutely intended from start to finish, because it is about inflicting harm. There doesn't need to be the overarching plan. There doesn't need to be they've broken the community because XYZ years from now. Don't bother trying to solve that riddle for somebody you're talking to. It's all about inflicting harm, and that's what these sick, degenerate scumbags get excited by. Now, over here on Entropy, we have Roy Danton, the great Roy Danton, super chatting $25 and writing, I feel a bit like being put into a time capsule and sent back some 25 years ago. You are describing how I remember my own childhood growing up in rural Deutschland. Well, thank you very much for sharing that, Roy. And in fact, it was earlier when I was on with Henrik. We played this Bill Maher and what's the guy that it was interviewing? Another dirtbag. Sorry?
Joe Rogan.
Rogan, yes. And Mar was talking about, well, when I was growing up, we didn't have any racial issues because there was only one race. And but that was a terrible thing. And there was no crime and there was no divorce and we could all just run the streets and not worry about being harmed. And then there was the fire department would blow a whistle at 6 and we would know to go home. But that's really awful. The kids today have it so much better. They're speculating. Unbelievable. Anti-whites are such scumbags. And yeah, it was kind of a childhood, I guess, I had much more akin to that. And I guess Roy's but nowadays they are not doing that. You end up, you disappear or you get to talk to down at the library and the son comes home in a dress or whatever it might be. Hansa, super chatting $5. Slavny Brat, we need to share I don't even know what that word is. Cherna Piva? I don't know how to pronounce that. One of these days. I salute you for your work for our people. Slava. Well, thank you so much, Hansa, for that. $5 and those kind words and things I can't pronounce, especially with my newly freed tongue that I don't know how to operate yet. But I'll figure it out. I'll get practice somehow. Ohesian Outlaw, $25. Thank you, my dear friend. I always look forward to the fellowship with a great people. Absolutely, we feel the same way. Everything about Slav and the Slavic people, magnificent folks. They shine brightly with the biospirit, and we need to make sure that we get to them with going free before the anti-whites get to them with their poison. Tall Kevin over on the questions widget. Slav, I feel sometimes Europe's social culture is romanticized when compared to the U.S., but the main difference everyone leaves out is geography. America is larger, so people don't feel like driving. And then MO, I'm not exactly sure. But Slav, what do you have to say to that? This idea that the geography being much larger, do you feel like that plays a role, that people are spread out more? And there are, of course, where they are together, they're together. But where towns are spread out, that this plays a role in keeping people from getting to know each other in these ways that is common in Serbia.
Geography plays a huge role in this. I mean, here in Canada, if I want to go to the next biggest city over to Vancouver, which is Calgary, it's a 12-hour drive by car and a 1-hour flight by plane. If I want to go to Toronto, which is on the other side of the country, it's a 5-hour flight or a 3-day drive. So Europe is tiny. I mean, you can within 1 or 2 hours you can be in a completely different country, enjoying a different culture, a different language, a different people. Everything is so close. From Serbia, you can get to Hungary, in 2 hours. You can get to Austria in 5 hours by car. So everything is super close. You can literally cross the continent in any direction in 1 to 3 hours. So geography plays a huge factor in this, and on a more micro level, even in the cities. In Serbia, since it was a socialist country, a lot of these government sort of projects, but the way they're constructed is a lot different than housing projects in North America, because you'll have 4 or 5 buildings in sort of a square, and then each set of buildings will have a courtyard in front, and these courtyards in front foster a good social climate because all the kids, play sports in front of their building. They play hide and seek, basketball, all day and all night long. So having a central place of meeting is very important, and that's something that that we don't have in North America per se. Just because, once again, it's a lot more individualistic. If you see buildings around here, even in appearance, they look very isolated. They're these glass towers, these gray glass towers with private property signs. And if you venture onto these properties, some old person will call the cops. So it's a lot different there. The geography and the sort of the topography and the layout of the city fosters the social climate, whereas here, every single building has a fence around it, or security cameras everywhere. That simply doesn't exist there.
And Tall Kevin adds just a bit to his statement there with reasons for things costing more in North America are transportation, of course, these great distances, products, along with the preservatives due to the transportation, and that's hours or countries away. Exactly. Yeah. So thank you very much, Tall Kevin, another great participant in service to White Wellbeing over here on the question widget, ladies and gentlemen, which, by the way, if you're not watching on Entropy, you can do so directly on Entropy or over on our joint site, Jared George and my the afterparty.tv. Find us there. Roy Danton here on the question widget as well, asking Slav, what's your relationship with your neighboring countries? Or this is over in Serbia. Is there any old resentment?
Old resentment. Well, yeah, as I mentioned earlier, there's resentment towards Americans, Brits, obviously the entire the NATO pact. There's a lot of resentment from people there because you have to remember in 1999, Serbia or essentially bombed nonstop. For 5 months by countries. So there is a lot of resentment. And, shortly after 99 and in the early 2000s, when the media was sort of heavily demonizing Serbia, there weren't a lot of Americans going because, seen as this barbaric country. So people there didn't have a lot of contact with Americans. And as I mentioned previously, once tourists started going, now everyone has had an encounter with a foreigner there. So, or with an American tourist or a British person that's working in Belgrade or in Serbia. So people are a lot more welcoming now. They're a lot more open-minded, obviously, about these things, and especially with the newer generation. I don't think that resentment is there simply because they're more exposed to it than some of the old generation.
Mm-hmm. Well, we also have Zero Talon super chatting $2 over here on Cash App. Thank you, dear friend. And writing, Bill Maher's company name, Kid Love Productions. Is that true? That is curious. We have question from Caper Mel. Has Squatting Slav visited Eastern Canada?
Yes, I have. I've been to Montreal and Toronto numerous times. I love both cities. Toronto was especially surprising because for a big as the financial hub of Canada and this giant city that it is. I found that people were a lot more social and a lot more approachable and a lot more easygoing than they were in Vancouver, which is a lot more smaller as a city, and Montreal as well is amazing. It almost feels like a European city inside of Canada.
Yeah.
Mm. We have, let's see, HB 2014 saying, this is not a question, just a comment for you, Slav, that your English is much more fluent than he remembered you speaking with back in 2019. Thank you for that, HB. Eke Lux does have a question for you. Let me thank Polygon for becoming a member during today's show. Thank you so much, Polygon. Eke Lux is asking, what does Slav think is a good balance point? What's an ideal population size and type, in his opinion? Do you have an opinion on population size, brother?
Population size, well, it depends on the scale that we're speaking of, a township, a village, a city, or a country. Personally, I prefer the smaller cities. Vancouver has 2 million people, and I think that's a fair number of people. But I personally don't like the busier metropolis cities. Like I was in London just earlier this year as well, on my way to Serbia. Now Marco, that's going to kill me for this, but yeah, London is just too busy for me. There's just too many people. It's overcrowded, and yeah, it's really really as I imagine it. I mean, I've been there a few times now, but I got out of the airport. I went to one of the local malls, and it was just too busy and very, very diverse. I'll just leave it at that. So yeah, smaller cities I definitely prefer over these bustling metropolises.
Yeah. I don't know if anyone asks this question. Maybe there's a formula we could get of how many people to square footage or something like that in a given area.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know much about that, but scale is something we do want to learn more about and do more shows about eventually, because it does seem to the notion of scale does seem to relate to a lot of other topics. It seems to be a hub that affects a lot of other considerations.
It really does. It does indeed. Folks, we're going to have another line of questioning for our good friend here in just a moment. But before we do get started, I want to let you know that if you have any final questions or comments for the great Slav, then make sure you get them in now. Tag me, tag Jared. Make sure when you're tagging us, you don't just write our names as Jason or Jared. We won't see those turn orange. You have to give us the names that we use in the chats. And of course, on the two different channels, it's going to be different for me. So do that now, and we will look for those. I will track them and copy and paste them, and I will hand it over to Jared so we can find out the final answers for tonight from Squatting Slav before we let him head off into the wilderness and wrestle black bears.
Bears, yeah.
Give them cute names.
I was pointing down for a minute because I used to put the great order there when you write in your name on StreamYard, the app we use for these streams. But I realize I might confuse people because in the chat, I'm Jared George because that's my YouTube channel after my first channel got nixed last June. So you can do the @JaredGeorge and I'd see that. It shows up orange for me, or @NoWhiteGuilt on the main channel, or Gardening with NWG on the secondary channel. Well, we're towards the end of our time here tonight, but there is a line of questioning that we can't help but ask. It's everyone's favorite topic. I know we touched on this when you were on back in March, but it always bears revisiting and seeing what other angles come up, or even if your recent trip shed any light on this. And this is, of course, the relations between the sexes, the juicy topic. So we've been talking a lot about comparisons with North America, Eastern Europe, particularly your native Serbia tonight. But we're interested to talk about the way the men and women interact. We know real life is not online life, but I don't know how active you are on social media, but there's a fair amount of division between young men and young women, even in these more dissident, right, traditional, white positive circles. And a lot of that's sowed by outsiders and saboteurs, as we know. But in the West and in the Americas, there's still a lot of bad feelings and a lot of finger pointing. This is because of your sex. No, all of this bad stuff going on is because of your sex and all that. So we're curious to hear about Serbia and the relations between men and women and what those are like, and what courting and dating is like, and marriage, and when people are getting married and are they staying together, and any of that. It's a big topic, but anything that sticks out as relevant that you'd like to share.
Yeah, that's an interesting topic. There's so much to be said on that. One thing that sticks out over there is that you'll have a lot more sort of friendly relationships between men and women. So you'll have these laws where men and women are simply friends, and it's not sexualized in any way. So that's a lot more common there. People will kind of hang out. Both sexes will hang out. Go for drinks, go out, and it won't be sexualized. I don't see too much of that here in North America. In North America, more separated. Guys go out with guys, girls have their girls' nights out with girls, and people are generally divided by their sexes. In terms of relationships there, I also find that a lot of girls there prefer to have relationships, and it's not just a smash and dash kind of thing like it is here in North America. People there, women there still girls are still looking for boyfriends. So that's great that there's this sort of romanticism in the air over there. But generally, I also feel like it's a lot more relaxed, the relations between men and women. Like you can approach women there, throw a few jokes their way, pick them up. And it's very easy. They're not necessarily easy women, but it's easy to approach them, and it's easy to socialize with them. Whereas here you'll get a little bit more of that snobbiness in a lot of women. Whereas there it's a lot more relaxed. And even if a girl isn't really into you or is doing her own thing, she won't let you know, or sort of get you out of her face. She'll kind of ease you out. But that's the main difference, I'd say, is that the relationships between the sexes are kind of more relaxed. There isn't always this sexual tension that exists here. Guys and girls can just be friends, and that's it. But I mean, if you guys are wondering, we'll keep it. But I mean, it's there's still this. It's a very social place, so people are always out. Clubs are packed with girls, bars are packed with girls. They're absolutely gorgeous. Like we were talking about this before the show, for reasons unknown. But girls there, girls there are absolutely beautiful. You'll walk down the street, and like you'll see a group of girls, and 4 out of the 5 girls will just be gorgeous, like almost model material. And they don't even hit the gym as often as they do as girls here. The food is a lot better. They walk a lot. They don't drive as much, so they'll walk it off, and they'll just have amazing figures. So I definitely recommend going over there and just seeing things for yourselves. For anyone that's interested, it will definitely change your mind and your outlook on a lot of things in life. And I know tons of people, especially from the UK, who move to work in various industries in Serbia, and I've spoken to them, and they have absolutely no will to go back to the UK. They absolutely love it there, and they can't believe that they've been missing out.
Yeah, that's a little complex, that angle, but I'm curious. You hit on something really interesting, and I'm sure that if we had time to think about it, we can really. There's a lot you could get into here. I'm curious if either of you have thoughts, and this is just it's a potentially heavy thing and just kind of off the cuff. You hit on something that really stuck out to me, and it's this interesting inverse. So, on the one hand, women in North America and parts of Western Europe and other parts of the West, we don't want to leave out our friends in Australia, New Zealand, and all that. The women are more standoffish, and there's more tension between the sexes, and yet sex itself is more casual. Whereas in Eastern Europe, and particularly Serbia, it sounds like what you're saying is that the basic, the first impression and getting to know someone, or even meeting random people when you're out and about, is a lot more easygoing, but the sex side is more valued, that you're going to want to be in a relationship or be looking to having a possible future with someone before that's really on the table. So the opposite, like, any thoughts on how that came to be and what those opposite attitudes say about the messaging and the programming that's gone on in the West, in the Western countries?
Yeah, that's kind of another misconception. A lot of people think that women there are traditional and that that they're holding up for marriage and that they don't that people don't engage in casual sex and all these things. I mean, those things are all.
I'm not assuming that everyone goes to the club and then, I mean, not that we want to be promoting like club behavior here, but I'm not assuming, but we're being realistic here. It's 2020. I'm not assuming all these young women are holding out until they're married, but I'm just saying that it sounds like what you're saying is that the social attitude's easier, but sex is still valued somewhat. It's not just casual, whereas here it's the opposite. It's everyone puts their mean face on and are spiky socially, but then are all swiping on Tinder and having extremely casual sex and not valuing it at all.
Yeah, for sure. Over there, it's a lot less taboo. I think that's what it is. Just because once again, it's sort of a more social climate, so people can talk about sex pretty openly, and they won't get all jittery and uppity like here. It's kind of, I think it's a little bit more taboo here, and you're absolutely right. People here are a lot more standoffish in person, and they put up all these walls to appear uninterested, or to appear like women especially, they can get a little bit snobby, pretend they aren't interested in men, this and that, but then behind the scenes they're miserable and they're craving men and they're craving love and affection and sex and all these things. So yeah, there people are a lot more approachable and easygoing. And it's like, okay, if I'm approaching a girl and I'm talking to her, she right away she assumes that I'm interested in her and that I'm some kind of romantic connection, whereas here they're a little bit more standoffish, and they'll kind of try to push you away at first, whereas over there I generally found that it's a lot more open, and girls flirt back a lot more. I've gone out with girls there, and I've gone on dates, and the girl can keep up a perfect conversation, whereas a lot of girls here sort of one-word answers. You have to do your best to keep up a conversation. So I just generally think people there are a lot more open and easygoing, and then that translates into all these sort of more relaxed attitudes on things like sex. But at the same time, people there are, like I said earlier, women are still they still want to have relationships. They still want to get married. A bunch of my friends got married this year. They're still having kids, relatively young. So it goes both ways. Definitely. It's not so black and white.
What is family life like? You said they're having kids earlier than in the Western countries.
Yeah, generally it seems that people are still, having kids in their sort of late 20s or early 30s. I believe there's a lot less cat women there than there are here. I also know that there's some government incentives now for people that have kids. They give them like a certain amount of money per child. So yeah, people are still having kids. I go there and I see people pushing babies in strollers, and it's good to see these things, because I find that in North America, especially in Vancouver, I mean, it might even be an exception. There's a lot of single women, a lot of women pushing 30, 35, who are still single, haven't had a long-term relationship in a long time, aren't interested in one, are focused on their careers, and family is sort of the last thing in their head. Whereas I think in Serbia, it's still sort of a priority, and women still want to be mothers and want to have children.
There's no shaming about a young woman wanting to be a mother and that being her primary focus, family, and as opposed to a career.
No, absolutely not. I think way less so than here. It's normal there that people are having kids and having them young, and that the husband is working. So in that regard, it's a little bit different, and it's definitely a little more encouraging.
And that, in spite of the fact that you said the schooling system is actually good. You said that earlier.
Yeah, the schooling system, I mean, as with everything in Serbia, there's a lot of bureaucracy. The schooling system, I think, is a little bit more thorough and detailed than it is here. Like I'm impressed by by kids' knowledge there. A third grader will be able to tell you the capital city of some random country halfway around the world, and just know all these things. So I think the educational system is a little bit more thorough. It's definitely changing and becoming more like the educational system here in North America. But overall, yeah, it's still, I think school there is still a lot more difficult than it is here. Like I remember in grade 5 over there, you learn in high school over here. So it's a little bit more challenging and definitely more thorough.
And Jason, are you going to tell us why you mysteriously were talking about Lithuania at the beginning of the show? Why you want Slav to be your tour guide up there? You can both check out the Baltic, just right above the Slavic countries.
Well, yes. I mean, it would be just a lovely trip. Well, what happened, folks, was that I was suggested a video by YouTube of the lovely architecture in Lithuania and the God-given architecture. And so I suggested to Slav that he take me on a trip through the lovely countryside of Lithuania. Maybe we'll make that happen. If we do, we'll definitely take a video camera and videotape the lovely conversations we have with everybody. But before we get there, we're going to have to answer some of these, ask and answer some of these questions we have. Roy Danton, super chatting $50 over here on Entropy. Thank you, dear friend.
Thank you, Roy.
Yes, indeed. And writing this fantastic discussion also once more inspired me to leave all the negativity and frustration behind and look ahead into our bright future. And it's Brexit Day. So let's celebrate.
Indeed.
Rule Britannia. Yes, indeed. Very well said, my good friend. $50 from the great Roy Danton. Great participant. And we have another one from Ohesian Outlaw. Another $25. Another $25. Thank you, my dear friend, for your service to White Wellbeing and writing. Thanks for having a great spokesman for our people. Have you ever had Colin Flannery as a guest? I know he was kicked off of YouTube. No, we haven't. But I guess we would welcome him if he would obey the YouTube rules and not get kicked off again and take us with him. But Jared, any thoughts on that? And I think we might have another. Yes, we do have another question. Before I pass it back to Jared and we get ready to wrap up here, Lapis has become a member and so has Dan of the channel. Thank you both very much during the show today, both becoming members of the channel. Thank you both very much. Jared, any thoughts on the Colin question?
Oh, nothing really to add to what you said already. I will say I was looking up pictures of Belgrade before, and it's absolutely beautiful. I recommend you guys do an image search. Not on Google, though, on another search engine. But yeah, Belgrade is beautiful. I don't know if I've ever specifically, I'm sure I've seen pictures of Belgrade before, but I've never specifically done an image search, and it's unbelievable. But then again, what European city isn't?
Yeah. Maybe those that have become predominantly representative of other biospirits. Not quite my taste, and I know it wouldn't serve Jared's palate either. So let me get this question here from
Otherwise,
the Pepper 67 asking, how do we build white positive communities IRL? Well, I will briefly speak to this and then hand it right over to Slav so we can get his thoughts on this. And as we say, begin to wrap up the show. We are building them. We are building them in real life right now, brother. And the first step to doing that is going to be a step that is unfamiliar, because we are in unfamiliar territory. As unfamiliar as the printing press was to all of those who, up to that moment, everything looked a certain way. And then once the printing press was in place, everybody said, well, how can this work? How could that work? It does not look like it looked before. That is how things look with this now peer-to-peer communication all the way around planet Earth. We have going on this final week of January, heading into the first week of February, the first month of the first year of the decade during which that we are going to roar and take back our destiny. We have, and I was reminded during the chat tonight, stickers, No White Guilt stickers are being found all over Wisconsin, but leaflets are being distributed in North Carolina, Oklahoma, Indiana, Florida, New York, California, Australia, Canada, the UK, Estonia, and Sweden. So worldwide reach organically. This is happening. And so what's going to happen is people are going to be going free in greater and greater numbers. There isn't going to be a, well, we finally got 5 guys together, and so let's all try to move to some, this is not going to be Gilligan's Island nationalism, ladies and gentlemen. There's not going to be any wannabe prince of Edward Island here. That's not going to work. That is childish. We are going to build our numbers and build our community by way of this curative contagion. And as I said a year and a half ago, if not earlier to you all, that is that we are going to have communities that are going to spring into existence because we're going to have people who are going to meet each other by way of virtual communities, which is just as real communities. I have met scores. I can't say hundreds because I'm not sure it'd be over 200 and be able to say hundreds, but certainly over 100 folks that I have met originally online, virtually, then meet them in person. And it is not a new meeting. It is somebody I already know. I met Lacey and Lacey Lynn and her husband, and we all came together in a giant hug, the first time seeing each other. So it's not meeting somebody for the very first time if you've already met them virtually. It's this is real. The disparagement of virtual reality is a non sequitur. It is a non-starter, and it is not going to serve us in service to white well-being and pursuit of really recapture of our destiny. So we're going to have groups of people come together virtually, and then those people are going to get to know each other virtually, and they're going to find out that, well, we have family, and they have a family, and they have a family, and what do you know? We are at relatively the same state, and professions would be such that we would be able to move together. That will be one way it will happen. Another way will be that men and women will meet each other for the first time going free, as we have had and is going on now with all of the wonderful things that we are accomplishing pragmatically, proactively, for the well-being of our individuals and our greater community at large. And they're going to come together, and they're going to start families, and they're going to start little communities. And you're going to have communities come together because you're going to have a family that starts going free on this street, and then they're going to find out that 2 streets down there's a family going free, and then 2 streets down there's another family going free, and then they're going to meet somebody online, and they're going to say there's a house for sale on the street over. Come move at this house if you can, and we'll get closer together. These things will sprout like white roses all over the West. It is already happening. It is not going to be some weird, mysterious, antiquated, childish plan that we draw with crayons on something. And I'm not suggesting, Pepper, that you're suggesting that whatsoever. I thank you for this question. It's a wonderful question to ask at this point in this coming to the end of this decade, which into the first month at the beginning of the first year of the decade that we're going to take back our destiny. And we have Brexit, a great victory for our people that holds some challenges, but as well a great momentum to it, a new nationalism that is going to unite Western kind on the basis of our biospirit around this world, the Great White Ring. As I say, that is happening organically. When has another group done this? They have not. This has not happened anywhere else. I've been in the white positive sphere for decades. Nothing like this has happened, certainly nothing organically from the ground up, from the people coming together in psychological defense of the psychological warfare that is being waged against us. You know what? The day is going to come when maybe Slav and I will live within a mile of each other. Maybe we won't, but somebody who's better than me and more able than me is going to live within a mile of Slav. These communities are going to get built. We are going to come together, but these tangible physical communities are going to be no more tangible than this community that we build around the world, because this is the new connection. The great business barons have discovered this a long time ago. They moved well ahead of the rest of the populations of their countries because they realized that the ability to communicate over vast different distances was far infinitely more powerful than just the people you had at hand. And that, my friends, is how we are going to recapture our destiny, with that exact same mechanism. No longer are we going to need the guy right next door or the lady right down the street to get our cup of flour. We're going to be able to find what we need any place on planet Earth when we need it. And the most important thing that we are going to need is information. And then we are going to apply that information in service to white well-being. So I'm going to give this to Slav as a question on the way out from the Peppers, asking about how do we build white positive communities, IRL, and then we will begin to wrap things up. My dear friend Slav, please go right ahead.
I think the best way to build white positive communities is essentially to rid ourselves of all the guilt that is affecting and plaguing, and that is aimed at white communities. As soon as we learn to embrace things like homogeneity and sort of open our eyes to the dangers of diversity and mass immigration and all these things that have for years now been damaging white communities, and obviously all of the slander that's aimed at white people within these communities. Well, that's when we're really going to start to prosper. But it's not going to happen until we learn to escape from this from the guilt, and until we learn to look within ourselves essentially and realize that that we're not the monsters that they're trying to tell us that we are, and that we're not guilty for all these things that they're pushing onto us, or that we have to listen to them, because the moment that we say no, it all stops. But that's all we have to do. All we have to do is say no. But in order to do that, we have to really have the information to be able to say no, and to realize that we'll never have a positive image of ourselves if we feel guilty for every single thing that's being thrown our way. So to build white positive first and foremost, we have to get rid of this sense of white guilt, and embrace all the lovely things that in the past had made our communities the wonderful places that they were.
Very well said. And keeping with that, Jared, you just keep the thought, the question in your mind and your answer right there for a moment. Pepper's saying, great speech. Thank you very much. And I'm sure you meant that for Slav as well. He's making fantastic points there. And to this, Slav, Nancy Drew had the question about censorship and consequences where you live for speaking freely. Are you able, where you are, to speak freely about what you just said there, about white guilting us, white shaming us, anti-whiteism, and are there repercussions for you? And then after you answer that, could you please let folks know where they can find you, what you're working on next? When can we see Squatting Slav out in a tracksuit and amongst some anti-white curs and making them look like fools again? We are all just hungering for that again, I know. So please, Slav, take it away.
Well, I used to live in Vancouver, which, as you guys may know or have seen in my videos, is an extremely liberal, yuppie city. It's basically like Portland, with a little bit of California mixed in there, UC Berkeley. So it's extremely liberal. You won't get punished for the things you say, but you'll definitely get a lot of backlash for you even holding right-wing political views, as you guys have probably seen in my videos. It's a very, very, very liberal city, and you won't get punished for the things you say per se. But like I said, the backlash from 90% of people there is there. Sorry, it's truly like a hippie/hipster city. So it's very much like Portland. Now, in terms of YouTube, I'm very busy these days with a million other projects. So I'm essentially laying low on YouTube for multiple reasons. One is because I don't have much time to make videos. I'm only going to make videos when I'm truly passionate about the subject or I find something very interesting. Until I move back to the city, I won't be making any interview videos on the streets in person, simply because I live in the middle of nowhere, so I can make nature videos like the golden one if you guys would like to see that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, yeah, I'm laying low on YouTube for multiple reasons. I found that overexposure leads to censorship and being removed from the platform. And as soon as I saw big channels such as and Red Ice TV I kind of knew that taking a more conservative approach to content production is a better strategy. Now, if I do get deleted, I get deleted. It is what it is. YouTube is an unstable platform, and that's definitely another reason why much time and effort into it. I feel that we can that all of us here and some of you guys in the chat, we all have such big social media networks. We reach so many people, and we're able to release all this content, but we have to move on to that and go a step further and commit to some kind of real life activism, because it's easy to make videos behind the screen, but it's harder to actually do something in real life. And this is aiming to do from this point. So I'm not making YouTube my priority, but that being said, you guys will definitely see more of me. I'm going off on a rant here, but you can find me on Twitter at Squatting Slav TV, YouTube, of course, Squatting Slav TV, and Facebook as well, Squatting Slav TV. So that's where I'm at. And if you want to send me an email, I'm pretty responsive to those, squattingslavtv@gmail.com.
Splendid. Jared George.
All right, so we're going to wrap up, do some closing procedures.
Yes, your thoughts, if you have any, to add on what I said or Slav said about creating communities IRL and where folks can find you, what you're working on. We know you're working on. By the way, folks, if you haven't seen it yet, I mentioned it at the start of the show when we first tapped in, and right now I'm going to mention it again before we tap out, and that is Jared George has a magnificent video that he produced, and he'll talk about it here for a moment so you all have an idea about what it's about. And it's up on Red Ice right now over on their website. I strongly encourage you to watch the video when we're done here, or make a note to watch it tomorrow. Mr. George, please.
Well, in terms of the community question, there's a lot of details we could get into, but you guys gave the right overlay, and I don't want to really repeat. I would just be repeating what you said. It was brilliant. I would just add, you want to think of in real life and internet as that we live in the internet age now, so we can't separate the two. You just have to understand they're going to be enmeshed, and that I know it might be frustrating right now and you feel like you're not around a lot of people, but we are creating these nodes. And the more we find out about each other and connect, those nodes will connect to each other, or there'll be more concentration in certain areas. And so the internet will feed the in real life stuff. It's going to be symbiotic. So try not to think about it as these two separate things. This is just the world that we live in, and let's have fun with it and let's use it to our advantage. But everything that these two gentlemen said was brilliant, so I don't really need to repeat it. Anyway, yeah, today was a good day. I mean, they're all good, but Flashback Friday, Jason was a guest co-host, speaking of Red Ice. So we both did something with Red Ice today. Please go check that out. Red Ice has the kind of account on DLive where you can actually go watch replays. I put it in the chat a few times, but you can go to Red Ice's DLive. We premiered another For Null, is that correct, video today?
Correct.
Channel.
Mm-hmm.
So that will be on the Tap TV site. All this stuff, of course, is going to be on the afterparty.tv. So it gets cataloged there. Easy to kind of scroll visually and see what's going on. This very stream you're watching now with Squatting Slav, of course, will soon be up too. This will all be up on the weekend. And then, yes, my fourth feature, very happy to say, is now out with Red Ice. Fourth video I've done for them. And this one is on the word hail. Sometimes you hear people give this greeting or this salutation or this blessing, hail. You might see it in the chat. People write hail. There's a lot to this word. There's a lot of complexity in kind of the union of opposites. And we see these things. I talk about this sometimes. We see our some of our people fetishizing other cultures. As a quick example, the yin yang. The yin yang is also a symbol of harmonizing opposites and the life force that's created with that. Well, believe it or not, the word hail contains that and has a whole belief system attached to it from our people that relates to that. And you're not shown those kinds of things. That's hidden from you. So I'm very passionate about finding these things. And I repeat, I tell people, because sometimes people reach out to me or introduce me on shows as if I'm an expert in this stuff. I am not an expert in this stuff. I'm not a scholar. There are people who have read and studied far more than I have. I'm learning along the way, and I just want to do my part to present it. So I'm happy to be learning and presenting it along the way. But it's hidden from you, and we have to recapture who we are. And that doesn't mean just recreating the past, but it does mean looking at character traits that have been hidden and character traits that transcend time, that have always been with us. So that's the spirit in which that kind of material is done, and it's a pleasure to do it. Henrik really brings it to life. I help him find some images, but then he goes and finds some more, puts it all together, and he uses his video editing expertise to really make it come to life. And it's such a pleasure and an honor to work with him and Lana and Red Ice. So yeah, please do go check it out. I'll share it on some things of mine too, because unfortunately Red Ice is of course off of YouTube. I'll put it on my Instagram, but when a video is first out, I try to make sure it stays on the Red Ice. And by the way, speaking of Red Ice, you can go watch it on their site or BitChute or whatnot. But it's a good reminder to say you should go consider becoming a Red Ice member, because of course you can see it on redicemembers.com, but then members only content. And of course, you're supporting Henrik and Lana when you do that. So please do go check out Red Ice members. It's pretty affordable. It's only a few bucks a month. It's really not bad. So please do go support them as well. Other than that, as I said, the afterparty.tv is where we catalog all of our media projects, and my own site is thegreatorder.com. You'll also see the videos I'm involved in and some extras as well, ways to be in contact. And one more thing, there's a newsletter on the Tap TV site, so please sign up to that as well. It's the best way for us to keep in touch. But anyway, I'll hand it to Jason. I will say to our British brothers and sisters, happy Brexit. Again, it's a step. There are many more steps, but we need to celebrate too. There's so much bad news. Take your victories when you can. Let's celebrate this as a step. We're all British tonight. We love you. We're sending our love across the pond to those listening now and in replay.
Very well said, Mr. George. We have a super chat over here on Entropy from Tall Kevin, $3 Canadian. Thank you, dear friend. And writing, I'd rather be here than in a bar drinking surrounded by scumbags. Going free is more of a positive social network than I and most can find IRL. Like most, us here look forward to these streams. Well, thank you so much, Tall Kevin. A big salute to you. Great words, great testimony to going free. And you have given several really magnificent testimonies. Thank you. And we are very happy that you have made some wonderful changes in your life, dear friend. And we look up to you and the others who have made similar changes in their lives. Now, let's see. We also have a super chat over here on Ko-fi from Brad. A couple of late super chats. Brad writing with $9. Great stream tonight with Squatting Slav. I'd love to someday see Eastern Europe's culture and relatively homogeneous society. Yes, I second that motion, Brad. Thank you so much. And we have Art, Acrobats, and Jules have both become channel members. Thank you both tonight during the stream becoming channel members. It looks like we just had a super chat come in on YouTube. Gandalf the White, number 2, super chatting $5 here on YouTube. Thank you so much. Gandalf 2020 having success waking up some older people to the Trump conspiracy. Thank you so much, Gandalf. Don't worry, the wizards are coming for the hobbits in the Shire. That's fantastic. Great to hear. And it doesn't matter how old or young you are. If you are in service to White Wellbeing, you are one of our heroes. Thank you for your service. Thank you for getting out there and speaking to folks. And thank you for that $5 super chat to the service of White Wellbeing. We'd like to thank also, of course, our moderators, Seaver and Laurel, who have done a magnificent job tonight. And we have a Tyro moderator. I'm sure he will be magnificent. Roy Danton, ladies and gentlemen, has entered the fray now as one of our moderators. He will be studying up, and he will be loosed upon the population as soon as we feel it is safe to do so. Mrs. Jess Horse, loving things so much. And we do love you as well, dear lady. $9.99 super chat here on YouTube in the closing moments. This is like the horse's nose coming out to win the race. Writing love our folks. Thank you so much, dear lady. All of these wonderful super chats in the last minutes of the race. And I'd like to spotlight a few folks that I saw over the course of the evening. I saw Bob Cow was here tonight. Western Crusader, salute to you. Black-Eyed 7788 was here tonight. David S., written with a W, thank you for being here tonight. And of course, we saw the lovely lady Marsha was in the chat, ribbing me a bit about my wild tongue. Nonetheless, I will lasso it, get it under control, and I will train and exercise it so it won't continue to be so wild moving forward in the future. But it is always a wonderful time to be here with you all here on tap with the great Jared George, and today is such a magnificent guest, Squatting Slav, and we're going to have him back more often, and we're going to be cajoling him as best we can to do some of those nature videos. Since he's not going to be going out into the urban wilderness, we want him to go out into the wooded wilderness and get some videos of the bears that he makes friends with, the bears that he wrestles, and even the bears that he has to run from. We'll get videos of all of those things and more when we see you next time here on the after party. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.